And with that in mind, out to Lincoln we go, where Matt Davison joins us for more on this upcoming Nebraska game. And let's start with what we were just talking about there, Tommy Armstrong. What is the latest on him? What are the expectations for Saturday?
Well, Mike, I think just a few days ago, we weren't very encouraged about Tommy's ability to play this weekend. I think as every day has gone along this week, it's looked a little bit better. And I'm not a doctor, and so I'm not sure yet, but I think everything has gone about as well as Nebraska fans could have hoped this week for Tommy. He hasn't really had any symptoms. I think he's going to start doing football stuff today and tomorrow. And as of right now, I think there's potential that he plays. I don't think earlier in the week we would have said that, but I think it's gone about as well this week as possible. Obviously, we just want the best for Tommy. If he's able to play, great, but obviously they're going to be cautious with him.
By the way, you've covered Nebraska for a long time. You used to play there. I assume that's one of the more scarier moments you ever had to witness on a football field.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you see injuries where, you know, a guy may break a leg or he sprains an ankle or he blows a knee, and those things make you cringe because, you know that person's going through a lot of pain. The way Tommy hit the ground, the way he was kind of whipped to the ground, hit his head, and you could tell he was knocked out cold. That's a scary situation. And you just hope that everything at that point, you know, that he's able to go on throughout the rest of his life without paralysis or without any sort of head trauma damage. And right now, it seems like he's come out of it about as well as we could have hoped. So he's a tough kid, man. Anybody that's watched Nebraska over the last few years knows he's a tough kid. But when it comes to concussions and brain injuries, it doesn't matter how tough you are. It's a matter of taking care of things and making sure that you don't do further damage down the road.
And obviously his health was unquestionably the most important thing at that point. But they did still have to play a game the rest of the way, and it did not go well for them, losing 62-3. What's that do to the mental state of the team right now?
Well, coming off the overtime loss to Wisconsin, you kind of wondered how Nebraska might respond going to Ohio State. And early on, it didn't go well with the pick six, and Nebraska got a field goal then, and you felt like maybe they could hang around and make this a battle, but obviously that didn't happen. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Ohio State exposed Nebraska in every way that Nebraska has kind of gotten away with things this year on the offensive line, on the defensive line, which have been the question marks for me when it comes to this football team. And Ohio State was able to take advantage of those things and really put one on the Huskers that night. I don't know if anybody saw a defeat like that coming, with the score being what it ended up to be, but no one was really shocked that Ohio State won the football game, but with the end score there, I mean, holy smokes, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Well, that's the thing. If you score only 3 points, it's clearly the offense's fault. Unless if you give up 62 points, it's clearly the defense's fault. So what was the biggest disappointment about that game?
Well, I think for Husker fans, as you look over the last 15 years, I would say that most people would say in our fan base, you know, don't get blown out. And there have been a few of those under previous coaches. And I think everybody was thinking, man, we're done with that. We're done getting blown out on national TV. And this is a prideful fan base, and rightfully so. We've won a lot of football games. But the pride in this fan base doesn't just stem from winning games. It comes from representing the school kind of in a way that represents the people of Nebraska. Hardworking, blue collar, you know, all that stuff. And I think on that game Saturday night, although I love our guys and I'm rooting for them, and I think they're going to bounce back this week, I think that's what hurt the most. That was what was the most disappointing when it got to 24-3, 31-3, 38-3. It just never stopped. The Huskers weren't able to stop the bleeding at all. And I think that was what was the most disappointing thing, was it was another blowout, another one of those games that was embarrassing by the end of the game, and I think most fans around here thought we were done with those type of games.
And yet, if you look at the standings of the Big Ten West, you see they still have only 2 losses overall. They're still technically tied for first place in there, but they do play Minnesota this weekend. If you lose that game, is it safe to say they're eliminated from the West?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you look at the games right now that are upcoming. You look at Wisconsin's schedule. I think Nebraska knows that they have to win out, and if they do, a 10-2 season is a heck of a year coming off of 5-7 a year ago. So there's still a lot to play for here, a lot out in front of this team. They can still play in a big-time bowl game, and they still have a chance at playing in the conference championship game, but they have to win all their games. I think everybody understands Wisconsin's probably not going to lose 2 more games, and so Nebraska has to take care of business on Saturday night against Minnesota.
Matt, before we go, just sort of a big picture thing. Last week, news came out that the Big Ten will be playing games on Friday nights starting next year. It'll be 6 games total. We now found out the schedule is out. I'm curious your overall take as a former player at Nebraska on the concept of Friday night games.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into it, Mike. I think for me personally, I don't think Nebraska needs to play a home Friday night game. I think a game on the road on a Friday night maybe makes some sense, I guess, if the conference wants to do that. But for teams like Nebraska, for multiple reasons, I don't think Nebraska needs to be playing Friday night games. We have a downtown campus. We have a big stadium. There's economic issues that go into it with hotels and restaurants around town. We're going to fill this place. I think you have high school football games, and that could run into ticket sales and people showing up to the game. And really, you have parking issues and everything else in downtown Lincoln. I just don't see why Nebraska needs to change that right now. I think Saturday games work just fine in Lincoln, and that's the way it should be. If the Huskers play a road game on a Friday night, I'm okay with that. But I think the home games in Lincoln need to be on Saturdays.
He's Matt Davison joining us from Lincoln. As always, thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Mike.